Hello, Paul.
Hello, Michelle. How are you?
I'm awesome. I'm so grateful that you're here with me. Thank you for joining me on Michelle's Conversations That Matter.
I'm grateful to be here, and thanks for inviting me. I look forward to our discussion.
Awesome. We met together on Clubhouse, and
Yes.
we became fast friends because of our advocacy work for mental health.
Yep.
And I'm grateful to have gotten to know you a little bit over the past God, it's like a couple of months now.
It is. Yeah. Time flies, doesn't it, when you're having fun?
It really does. So I chose to invite you today to talk about this positive mindset versus mental health imbalance, because I think it's a really important topic.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're going to dive into that in a second.
Okay.
But first, a little bit about what I do. So I launched Michelle's Conversations That Matter because I really wanted to elevate the conversation around mental health. I wanted to create more awareness, inspire people, educate people. I have people from all over and in all areas, like whether they're experts or clinicians or individuals telling their story. It's just a matter of really getting a voice out there for mental health.
Yeah.
And what I do professionally is I work with organizations to teach resilience, psychological resiliency in the workplace, and cultivate cultures of compassion for people with invisible disabilities. So this is not our first conversation. We met on Clubhouse, and we did this lead up to Mental Health Awareness Month, which is May.
Yes.
Where we did a series together, the mental health, what did you call it? Stigma Busters series.
Yeah. The mental health stigma busting series, and it's just all about, like we talked about, starting the conversation. Too many people are afraid to have the conversation. They're afraid to talk about it. They're afraid to be shamed or what have you, because the stigma associated to having, which I love what you said, the invisible disease, the stigma behind it is crazy. And we've got to remove that. I mean, it's okay not to be okay, people. It is okay. Yeah. We all struggle. I mean, you and I just were talking prior to this that I had a bad day yesterday. I had a bad mental day. I was very hard on myself and very tough. And we have to be cognizant of that. And, sometimes you have to name that person to go, hey, you need to leave. I don't, those types of things. So
I got it. Yeah. It's the human side. And I think that's why I gravitated to your energy and what you're up to, because it's so relatable. So introduce yourself. I know who you are, but tell everyone who you are, where you live, and what you do for a living.
I will do that. First of all, I just want to thank you for doing what you do. It's, it's people like you that get the conversation started and, to make an impact. Without that, we just need to make sure that we continue that. So for me, I'm the founder of Zup to You. And the importance of Zup to You to me is I do personal coaching and development to teach people how to be the difference in their life. And really it's about embracing your superpower. And most people don't realize we have a superpower, and it's just being yourself. We're all unique for a reason, but we're afraid to embrace it because, society says you got to do this. And I'll give you an interesting quote that I heard years ago. It's just, in terms of when we're young, we're taught to fit in. Then when we get older, we're told you don't stand out enough.
Yeah.
It's a wonder we're confused about what we should do and how we should do it. So, I work with people to do that. And it was so important to me when building this brand, this Zup to You brand, because it's up to you to be the difference. It's up to you to be the difference in your life. Was how do I give back? I witnessed suicide at a very young age of 9 years old. I'm 52, I'm not ashamed to admit it, but I can tell you right now, every detail that was in that room, and that was over 40 something years ago, every detail of what I witnessed when I opened that. I also struggled from a learning disability and this in school. And I was made fun of because I didn't realize at the time that learning differently or slower was okay. I mean, I just was, being kids, and it was just like, hey, you're the R word, which I hate that word, but it's just like, I was treated differently all of a sudden. And then I've witnessed a number of family members and friends struggle with addiction. The one that impacted me the most was my mother, who almost drank herself to death. And if it wasn't for my father going home to find her, which is ironic, my dad went home that day and he had packed a bag not to come back because he just felt he couldn't help her anymore. But he found her, and then she was sober for 14 years before she ended up passing of complications from heart surgery. But for me, it's important to help people embrace that superpower that we all know that we have, but sometimes we don't know how to get it. And then to do that, to give back in this space that's so important, especially with mental health, because, and with men, we don't, when I was growing up, it's like you got to be tough. Don't cry. Don't do this. Show the strength. Boom, boom, boom. And it's like, no, I just kind of want to cry. I don't, and I'm not ashamed to cry. I'll cry at a commercial. I'll cry at a movie. I just haven't learned how to embrace that over the years. So I think it's really important. So.
That's awesome. No, it's good. It sounds like you've done some work and gotten really self-aware. I wish more men were more self-aware and not so ashamed to be who they are.
Yeah, I'm definitely self-aware, but I want to be candid with everybody. Like I just mentioned with you, I have my days. I sometimes have my days. I've got to keep myself in check. Like, whoa, hold up a minute, hold up. So it's one of those things we have to be cognizant, aware of, and to support people is important. People need support during that time, and I'm very lucky to have people in my life that support me as well. So.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So we did this Clubhouse room. We did it every day last week. We did it every morning consistently, and we had no idea who was going to show up. It was so crazy. It was like one day we had like a couple of crickets showed up.
We did. Yep.
Another day we had a full room. It was so amazing to just hold that space for anyone who wanted to come in and engage with us.
And I don't know about you, but I felt good. And I know when we would text afterwards behind the scenes and stuff, we impacted some people.
We did.
Some people came in and we impacted and we made some connections about starting the conversation. Some people who have struggled and said, hey, thank you for doing this. And we're going to do some more rooms. We talked about it because, we work well together. We feed off each other and we keep the conversation going. So for me, it was very rewarding and I enjoyed working with you. And it was just easy. And I think we made an impact. I feel really good about it. So
yeah, me too. I really enjoyed it. And I loved how we had different topics and met different people. And, it's so intimidating in Clubhouse, right? When you're like, you schedule a room, there's a few people there and that there's a 5,000 person room going on next door.
Sure.
That like, you're small potatoes compared to these bigger rooms, but it didn't really matter because of our
I want to touch on that because when you said that, it sparked something in me in terms of, being nervous on Clubhouse and being on Clubhouse. It's just our picture and then our voices. Yeah. It's not like social media. And this to me feeds into part of the mental aspect is social media. You see these perfect posts. Hey, I'm happy. Yeah. It's not cool to talk about, by the way, I'm not okay today. It's not cool to talk about that. It's cool to talk about everything's great. Everything's wonderful. But behind the scenes, it's chaos.
Yeah.
So, it's important and making that difference and being open and vulnerable. And that's what I love about Clubhouse.
Yeah.
It just lets you be you.
Yeah.
I have a t-shirt line that says, just be you and let the world adjust. That's all we can do is be ourselves. So, yeah.
And it is the aspect, I will just say this and we'll move on. It's the aspect of the warmth that you get from a voice.
Yes.
You can't get that anywhere else. So I think it's great. And, there's some noise out there going, okay, well, now that most people are getting vaccinated, the need for Clubhouse is going to diminish because we're going to be back in person. Mm-hmm. I don't think so. I think people always need that connection. I know for me, the voices, hearing people talk has personally helped me being quarantined, living alone, being by myself.
Yeah.
To feel better from a mental and emotional standpoint. I don't know.
Yeah, I think here's what I think. I think viewership and usership will go down just like anything else. It comes in, it spikes up, and then it'll start to level off. Mm-hmm. And I think as they get new users in, Android users, it'll pick up a little bit. It's like any social platform. It's new, it picks up, something changes, but I still think it's one of those mediums that allows you to have a conversation with somebody else. I mean, we had people from the UK in our room. We had people from it's just amazing.
It is.
I'm in Las Vegas, you're in New Jersey, and they're in the UK, and we're having a conversation all at the same time.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah. It's pretty cool. That's right. You're in Vegas. I forgot to mention, or you forgot to mention you're in Las Vegas.
Yeah, I totally forgot.
It's all good.
Just in this little place called Las Vegas, not a big deal.
Little place, yeah. It's funny. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about. We're going to dive into this topic around the two, whether it's a positive mindset or imbalance. But I want to touch on the fact that you're an entrepreneur. because we have similar histories in that we both were in a corporate setting for full-time work for many years, and then the transition over to becoming an entrepreneur. Gosh, what was your greatest learning experience in transitioning and becoming an entrepreneur from being, in a corporate environment?
The biggest learning experiences is that I was always good in a structured environment from a corporate world, wanting to chase the next step, you manager, director, president, whatever it was, climb the ladder, do what, do it. When in reality, I'm sitting to myself going, yeah, it's cool. I like the accolades. I get that, but it's not filling my cup. It's not doing what I'm doing. So conversely, being an entrepreneur, you do all those things. You make it happen. You make the decisions. You do this stuff. And, for me, it's like, okay, I got to do all this stuff and go, boom, I'm making the difference. I'm doing this. I'm doing that. And it's not one person because it takes a team to build it. But when you first get started, it's your concept, it's your idea. And then you go, oh, I'm going to make this work this way. And then you start talking to your inner circle and saying, hey, what do you think about this? What do you think about this? Some go, you're nuts. Go back to the corporate word safe. And, then I say, what if I wouldn't have done this? I don't want to look back and go, what if that would have happened? I'm not going to get a second chance. We get one at bat. That's it. We get one at bat. We're not going to get another at bat at life. You get one at bat, make the most of it and do what you do. For me, I was just trying to fit in and be part of the group and do what everybody said I should do. And there was just part of me that's going, you've got to do something different and bigger. And why not start at 51 years old?
Who cares, right? I love it. What do you love about being an entrepreneur? What's like the thing that you really love? Is it the freedom? Is it the flexibility? Is it I don't know. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but what is it?
I love both the freedom and the flexibility, but I love making an impact. I had someone reach out to me that follows me on Instagram and Facebook, and they just said to me, your post and the way you talk and how you uplift people pulled me out of a deep hole. I just want to thank you. I don't know this person, but for me, making that content and doing that and helping that one person, that's what it's about. Yeah, the freedom's nice, but let's be honest, Michelle, the freedom of we work 24/7, whether it's, you get done with dinner. I just had dinner. I got the freedom to go work again. That's the freedom, which people don't realize. And I always have this funny saying. It's like people see the finish line, right? Oh, look at that successful person. Yeah. Did you see the hours and hours and hours of hard work I put in to get there? And it takes a lot of it. So, but just making a difference for me in individuals' lives, and it's also making a difference in my life. Whether when you give first, you have a servant. You give, it helps you, and I think people forget that aspect of life.
And that's always one of my tips. And I didn't realize this until I think it was my therapist or someone I know near and dear to me said when I was in a funk to go and help someone, go and extend yourself to someone. That's like one of the things that I try to do when I'm in a funk is like, okay, so who can I reach out to and extend myself to so that I get out of here and start and focus over there and focus on what their needs are. And temporarily suspend like the pity party, the upset, whatever's going on with me. Do you agree with that?
I totally agree with that. I think it's extremely important. And, I know we're going to touch on my grandfather later, but he had an amazing impact. He would always tell me that a busy mind is a good mind. Get out, be busy, talk to people. Don't wallow in your poop, for lack of a better term. You've got to get out and get out of your own head and just go be out and about. And I think that's extremely important because if we sit around and wallow, here's another interesting quote from Gary John Bishop, who I'm an avid fan of, and I love his work because he's just direct to the point. He says, the funny thing about self-reflection is not only are you the con artist, you're the one being conned. So if you think about that, you tell yourself it's okay and this and that, and then you're not, and you're just conning yourself, and you've got to get out of that headspace. Got to get out of that headspace. It does take work. It's not easy. You can't snap your fingers. You're like, I'm done. I'm out. But yeah, you've got to do that and get out and about and start talking to people because, when we were talking about human interaction in Clubhouse, you're actually talking to people. I know it's not like we're Zooming and talking and doing all this stuff, but it's not face to face, but it is a connection. It is a discussion, which is helpful.
Yeah, totally. Well, let's talk about your grandfather because I don't think I've had a conversation with you where grandpa has not come up. So please tell everyone who he was and why you live by so much of what he taught you.
He just was an amazing man. I got to spend time with him, and we had a garden in our backyard, and he would come water the garden, and he lost his leg in a mining accident. His leg was crushed, and they ended up having to amputate it. And the thing that he embodies most is humility, respect for people, and humor. Things that I have taken all those things from him. When I was younger, I'd run out to meet him, and he'd come walking up, and he'd give me 2 bits and a pack of Lifesavers. For those of you who don't know, 2 bits is a quarter. And I would just love it. And he would build these stools. We'd get him out. He would sit down, take his leg off, and then I'd go help him water the garden. And at the end of the time, he'd look at me and go, "Thanks for your time." And I finally asked him one time, like, "Grandpa, why do you always say thanks for your time? I don't get it. I'm a little kid, right?" He's like, "Paul, time is something you can never get back. And you chose to spend it with me." Mm-hmm. I didn't realize it at the time. Mm-hmm. And then there's other sayings that he has that mean a lot to me. They mean so much. I have them, tattooed on my chest just because he's so with me. Mm-hmm. The other one is life gives you the test first and the lesson after. It's not like school where you prepare for the test. You get to do this. When we go out in the world today and we do our thing, we don't know if we make a left turn, if we get hit by a car. If we would have made the right turn, we don't. Yeah. And I just use that example. I understand it's extreme, but the point is we don't get a chance to prepare.
Yeah.
So when something happens in life, do you take the time to learn the lesson? Because that's so important. Yeah. And from a mental health aspect, and a mindset aspect, he's like, "Paul, you have a backpack of life." And I used to carry everybody's issues, and I can make things better. I can do this. I want to be here. And I think this is part of my ultimate effort to give back to people. Yeah. I want to give back to people, but what I can't do is put their issues in my backpack of life, because it's going to weigh me down and I won't be able to function. He's like, "Paul, you need to make sure you put the things that truly matter in this backpack of life and nothing else. Get rid of all the stuff that's not good for you, not healthy for you, and get it out and just move on." So those are just, I could seriously probably have an hour discussion about my grandfather, but those are just some of the things that he did for me that really, I still do. Oh, the one thing I forgot is the humor. We would go to the grocery store or whatever. And he's a jokester. You haven't seen me in person yet, but when you do, you'll know I'm a jokester all the time. He would walk in, we get in line, and he'd tap someone on the shoulder. He's like, "Excuse me, can I go ahead of you? I have a cake in the oven." And people would just like, "Sure." He's like, "Nah, I'm just kidding you." But this is what he would do in the grocery store. And I'm laughing, and I'm just laughing. My grandpa's like, "Wasn't that funny?" This is awesome.
Great.
not sure who has cake in the oven these days. You can buy it, but at that point, it's it was funny.
It's so funny. What about hope?
It's in terms of he was always one that said, "It's going to be better. It's going to be okay. You're going to be okay." Whenever we would go through something difficult in life or what have you, he's just like, "It's going to be okay. I know you don't realize that or understand that, but it is going to be okay." And he's right. He really is truly right. So we sweat over the trivial things in life. This kid here, right here, me, I'm guilty of that so bad that sometimes I got to go, "What am I doing? Stop that. Stop that." So yeah, he's just an amazing man.
That's amazing. I mean, I think we all have someone like that in our lives who has helped shape our character and make us who we are. I was actually referring to help one person every day.
Oh, the hope. Yes. I didn't realize you were going there yet. So yeah, that was the acronym we picked up on Clubhouse.
Yes.
In terms of being able to, when I heard that acronym, I was like, man, I see hope all the time, but help one person every day, whatever it may be. And I think I recall I'm an early riser. I go to the gym in the morning, and I think I told you about the time I was going across the street to get a cup of coffee, and there was a lady that could barely get across the street. I got out. Everybody's honking at me because I'm blogging the thing, but I'm helping her get across the street so she gets safe. Just one example of helping one person every day.
One
person. If we all help one person every day, could you imagine how different the world would be?
Yeah.
I mean, by the way, that's a challenge for everybody. Help one person every day, please. I challenge you.
But it means putting someone else before yourself, right? It means like having the courage to do that and really extend yourself. So it's a good challenge. It's a good challenge. Hopefully somebody hopefully the people watching will take that challenge on and say, yes, I'm going to do something, some small thing to help someone.
There's one thing too I want to add. So, my grandfather had an amazing impact on me emotionally. My work ethic comes from my father. He did whatever he could do to keep the family moving, worked 2 or 3 jobs. He worked a lot. And my work ethic comes from him in terms of doing whatever it takes to take care of everybody.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I was an avid hockey player. I traveled all over the country to play hockey, and my dad paid for that. And he worked as many jobs as he could for my brothers and I to do that. So I'd be remiss if I didn't include him, because he worked so hard all the time. He was work. And that's where I think I get my work ethic from, in terms of making sure you got to do what you said you're going to do and get it done. So, yeah.
So switching gears a little bit now, I want to talk about your advocacy for mental health. You touched on it a little bit in the introduction, but I would love for you to share with us your connection with mental health and why it is so important for you to use your voice to help those struggling.
Yeah, I just think that, I touched in the intro about, experiencing suicide at a very young age, and conversely to see as a teenager, a couple of friends in the neighborhood take their own life, but not realizing that they're struggling or what's happening or what's going on. And then to go through what I went through in life in terms of the bullying, and you see it and it's just like, hey, like I said earlier, we just want to fit in and be part of the group. What's so important, but what we don't realize is the significance is really not there. And it's like, when my grandfather said everything's going to be okay. And I equate this to when you're a child and you don't get to go to the party, you think your world is over. All the cool kids are at the party. You don't get to go, but it really doesn't matter. So for me, it's important that people understand that it's okay to express how you feel and what's going on. And when my mom was sick, my friends would say, she can just turn it off. Why doesn't she just stop drinking? Is she weak? Does she do this? And it's just not my mom when it comes to that stuff for substance abuse, but it's just in general, even people with a mental health illness, you're weak. You just, and people don't, it boggles my mind that people just don't understand that it's an illness, and it's something we need to address and talk about freely.
Yeah.
And I think about it this way. Smoking was so accepted. I remember flying, and again, I'm dating myself, the airplane had ashtrays, everybody smoking. Yeah. There's a non-smoking section in the front and the smoking in the back. Well, guess what? The smoke just comes up here. But if we can put the initiative behind that to address that, we should be able to do it with mental health. And I'm big about challenges, but in terms of challenging people, it's important to understand that we need to change the conversation about mental health and say that it's okay to not be okay. And the stigma associated with it, we need to somehow put the effort behind it and do maintenance like we do for our car, like we do for our house. Why doesn't anybody talk about that? Why doesn't anybody talk about doing, stuff for mental health? And we need to do that. And, I've put stuff out about that, and we've had that conversation. So it needs to be something. And men, women in general, yes. But for me, I mean, we talked about men not embracing that. And I think that it's important that we start embracing the fact that it's okay not to be okay.
Yeah, and so when I think about this topic that we're talking about, like I want to really dive into this positive mindset versus mental health imbalance. And you are a coach, and I've done so much self-development work through different organizations, and I like to think that I have a mental toughness, and that I'm pretty resilient and I can power through with a positive mindset. But then there comes a point where there's like a legit imbalance. And so I think that we need to talk about this, because sometimes it's not a matter of grinding it out and pressing forward and filling your head with positive mumbo jumbo. It's legit. You need to reach out and get clinical support. What are your thoughts around that? I think about entrepreneurs specifically who ride the wave of highs and lows, who are isolated most of the time, and they're listening to leaders who say, grind it out, whatever. What are your thoughts around that?
I think grind it out and do all these things and do all this stuff is kind of I don't want to say fad, but it's something that's not, it's interesting, but it's a couple of things that I try to keep in mind. It's important to observe your thoughts. You don't necessarily need to believe them. And the other thing is we spend most of our day talking to ourselves. We may as well make it a good place to be. So that's what I talk about, positive mindset. But we also need to understand in terms of not everything's sunshine and rainbows. We have to understand that a positive mindset doesn't fix everything. It's, a positive quote doesn't make it all better. It's like you go into a house, and it was the analogy I used earlier with social media, people posing and doing all these things. You go over to their house, everything looks tidy. But if you were to remove the rug, there's all these bugs under it and all these things because they've just swept them under the carpet. And, even an analogy with my grandfather, the more stuff you put in your backpack, the heavier it gets. It's harder for you to move and scale through life. And so those things about being able to have that mental health imbalance and go, okay, I know I need to do something because I'm not feeling right, and being okay. It's okay to see someone and talk about it. And you can start with somebody close in your family. I tell people that at the end of the day, who can you talk to with zero ambition or worries about what's going to happen? They're going to accept you for who you are. Right. How many of those people do you have in your life? Okay, I've got 2 or 3. Great. Write them down. Whenever you're struggling, ping them and talk to them. Start there. Small steps. We can't go from this to right into therapy quickly. Sometimes a lot of people, it takes step and encouragement. That's why you want to encourage people. Yeah. But at the end of the day, it is something that positive mindset doesn't just necessarily fix it. It's important to have a positive mindset. Absolutely. Right. But when you're struggling, like you spoke about earlier, Michelle, you've got to be able to go get to see somebody. Like, I see a therapist. Whoa, you see a therapist? Yeah, I do. It's better than seeing a therapist in terms of turning to drugs, turning to alcohol, turning to destructive behaviors, or doing these things you shouldn't be doing. Right. And the thing about a therapist that's so nice, I didn't really elaborate in my introduction, but I lost a fiance to cancer 21 years ago. And when I went into therapy, it was just that person wasn't connected to the situation, didn't have any ties to me, didn't know I tied my shoes with my left or right hand, whatever the example is. They just listened and gave me advice based on what I told them. And a technique I still use today is if I'm struggling, I will grab a notebook and I'll write everything that's on my mind. Yeah. It doesn't have to be grammatically correct, but I'm not good at writing anyway, but I just write anything that comes to my mind. Then when I'm done, rip it off, throw it away and flush it. I don't ever want to visit again. I just took it out of my mental backpack. Yeah. I just got it out of my system. Yeah. And that's something that I use for me to kind of keep my mental health in balance when I feel like it's out of balance. That's something that I use.
So good. There's so many things I want to grab onto of what you just said. The one thing that really resonates is the piece around self-awareness and knowing how you're doing. I try to remind people that, when we wake up in the morning, now that we're in our late 40s and 50s, you wake up in the morning and you do this physical body scan of what you worked out too hard the day before is hey, maybe not so much today. Yeah. But you feel your physical ailments when you wake up in the morning, but yet we don't check in with how we're feeling emotionally or mentally. And then we let that go, and then it compounds after the day and all the experiences. And then it escalates and you start to feel worse and worse. So I want to see people start to reflect more on how they're feeling. And then like you said, it's so freaking important is having that confidant, someone you can talk to when you are not in a good place, not when you're in crisis, but when you're just not in a good place. And then that can help you feel better before you escalate and things get even worse.
Yeah, because you've got to have that comfort to be able to share and be open and be vulnerable and, know that it's okay. And sometimes we don't want to be seen as weak, or we don't want to be if I can get anything across today, you being vulnerable to how you're feeling and being open is the strength that it takes to do that. It's not being weak, people. It's not. You are stronger than you imagine because you're able to do that. And the weak part in my mind is shoveling under the rug because you don't want to deal with it. That's the thing. And that's kind of the analogy that I want to take from this is you're stronger than you realize. And when you address it, it's like, man, I'm so glad I got that off my chest and was able to talk to somebody, what have you. And I just, if we can help people get to that point, then it's important.
Yeah. I mean, I had my therapist on last week. I spoke to my therapist about just mental health in general. And I tell you, I have no shame like you, no embarrassment around getting therapy because life is going to come at you, and life has come at me. And, I've navigated depression as well. And it's a good thing to have a therapist in your pocket. No, because I think that is also the reality, is that's a barrier for people. I wouldn't even know who to go to. I don't know if I'm going to like them. Oh, I tried and it was a nightmare. So I'm just going to quit. I'm not going to keep trying. And so I always say, like, find yourself a therapist, and, even find one before you need them. Build a rapport with them. God forbid life throws a curveball, and then you have someone you would feel comfortable talking to.
Yeah. That's a great point. A couple things I want to dovetail off that is life's never going to stop throwing stuff at you. Yeah. It's going to do that your entire life. So, buckle in, it's going to happen. And then in terms of, when you're talking about finding a therapist or whatever, I'm not comfortable, I'm not this, I'm not sure that I'm going to like them. I want you to think about it this way. How many people have come in and out of your life? When you first started walking and, you were crawling, you fall down, or you're riding your bike. Did you fall down? Did you give up? No, you kept doing it. You have the resilience. Mm-hmm. You do have it in you. How do you harness that and get it out and go, okay, I'm okay doing that. I can do this. And because I think it's important. I mean, we've got to be able to do that and say, okay, I'm going to go talk to somebody. I didn't like that person. That's great. We don't like everybody we come in contact with.
Yeah.
And I don't. I tell you, but I don't wish him harm. I wish him the best. It's just we didn't mesh. So I wish you the best. Let's move on and I'll find someone that I feel more comfortable with.
Right.
But, I just encourage people not to stop because they tried one thing and it didn't work. How many times have we tried one thing and it didn't work? We tried it again, and it was one of the most rewarding things we've ever done. That's important to understand, even when it comes to your mental health.
Right.
So.
Yeah. And, as someone who, I don't know anyone, I mean, I've been fortunate. My lens on mental health is my mother's bipolar disorder, my own depression, but I've never lost someone to suicide. And you have. So all I know is I don't want people to suffer in isolation and silence that ultimately leads them to a loss of life. So as someone who's lost someone to suicide, what message do you have for someone out there who might be struggling or feeling hopeless? Because there's always a ripple effect that they're not thinking about. They're thinking about the pain that they're dealing with now, but I can only imagine the pain that it caused everyone who loved them.
Yeah. And this is such a tough topic for me because, every individual is different.
Yeah.
But that I would encourage them to do and think about is if you have those thoughts or whatever, please reach out to someone and let them know how you're feeling and talk to them. It's not as bad as you think it is in terms of we always have this thing in our mind that it's going to be X, Y. I can't overcome this. I can't do this. You are stronger than you believe, and you can overcome these things. You just need to understand that it's okay to reach out for help. And the hard part is I've done a number of research on suicide and things in terms of there are, I believe it was Wendell that was on our conversations that actually survived a suicide attempt. I didn't realize for every one successful that 25 survive.
Yeah.
In terms of he is grateful to be alive. He is grateful to understand. And I just think in terms of, I implore anybody out there, if you're struggling, I don't know, DM me, call me. There's all my contact information. I'll do what I can. I'll listen to you. I'll help you. It's at the end of the day, it's not as bad as that we make it up in our head to be, because you can get through it and you can do it. I'm not saying it's not irrelevant, and I don't want to minimize what you're going through, because what you're going through is extremely important, but you can get through it. You can do it. And I just would encourage you all to reach out for help in any way that you can, because it's one of those things that when we look at it, it's a split-second decision for your entire life, and we've got to be very cognizant of that. There's a lot of people it impacts. Sometimes we have to step out, like I mentioned earlier. You name that thing in your head. Sometimes you have to step out and go, "What about all these other people?
Right?
What's the effect it's going to have on these other people?"
Right?
So, yeah, it's a tough one. It's a tough. I'm not an expert in that, and I'm, like I said, I mentioned before, I'm an advocate, not an expert.
Yeah,
but an advocate looking to make a difference, to let people know that it's okay.
Yeah.
And sometimes advocates can be a good conduit to professionals.
Yes.
If that makes sense, right?
Oh, absolutely.
A good conduit. And sometimes that's all they need is a conduit.
Absolutely.
Sometimes they need someone to listen to them and go, okay, hey, it's okay to do that.
Yeah.
And being that, I mean, you got to think about all these things that conduits are needed for, right? I mean, it's important. So,
right.
Yeah.
So what about you? What is your go-to? Like you said, you were having a bad day yesterday. Like, what's your go-to? I know that you work out a lot. You are an early riser and you hit the gym. And so I'm sure that's helpful, but like, what do you do when you just feel like crap?
Last night I was struggling a little bit in terms of I just felt like I was, and then we've had this discussion. Being an entrepreneur, you work, you work, you work, you work,
Yeah.
you work, and you don't get to see the immediate success, and you don't get to see that. So for me last night, I took about 15 minutes just to sit aside and sit by myself and let myself know that it's okay that I'm feeling this way. It's okay. Okay, I feel this way. Paul, here's what's happening. Here's why I feel this way. Okay. What good did you do today? Did X, Y, and Z. Great. It, it's interesting. Anything you do today, you may not see the rewards, but you'll see them later. So
Yeah.
it's important to understand that. So for me, it's just, I like to check in with myself and give myself space and time to articulate what's on my mind. And, people are like, well, it sounds like you're talking to yourself. Well, I'm talking to myself a lot. And as I mentioned earlier, we do it all the time. So I do my best to make it a happy place to be. And I sometimes have to keep myself in check. I have to go, no. Stop being so hard on yourself. Because personally, I am my own worst critic. I was just got to see my family. I hadn't seen him in quite some time. We got everybody together, and I make these little famous potatoes, and everybody loves them. But I didn't like them this time. I made 2 batches. I just didn't think they came out right. And everybody's like, they taste great. I'm like, they're horrible. They don't look right. The consistency's not right. They're like, Paul, stop being so hard on yourself. And they're like, yeah, guess I probably should. They taste pretty good. But to me, and it's just an example that popped into my head as you and I were having this discussion. But it's the same thing with when you're struggling.
Yeah.
You have to be kind and compassionate to yourself.
Yeah.
And, what's the worst that's going to happen to us if we make a bad decision? What's
Right.
the worst?
Yeah.
I mean, think about it.
Yeah.
So yeah,
It's
that's
true.
for me. Just getting into my mental space and
Mhm.
talking to myself and allowing myself to feel and address the topic where years ago, I just would have been like, I'm fine, let's move on. And I would have been angry, and that, that little, you have to let that go. It's just not healthy for you. So that's how I do it.
Do you have any messages for men out there? Because I know there's a lot of men that just are not willing to even acknowledge they're struggling. Like what their go-to is like, you heard in our first responder room that we had, there's a lot of first responders, a lot of men in general that will hit the bar. I know quite a few myself who just want to escape reality, and they hit the bar and they think that that's helpful, but in reality, it's not. So any messages for men out there who just are not acknowledging their own mental health and their own well-being?
Yeah. I mean, I think I want to go back to what you'd said before about, in terms of you're just covering it up. You're just putting a Band-Aid on the sore. It's in terms, it's not going to get any better. It's going to get worse. It's going to foster. It's going to come back, because once you get out of there, it's going to come back to you. But I would encourage all men, if you're struggling in any way, to find, whether it's an accountability partner or a person that you can trust, that you can go to and talk to, because it's not a weakness to talk to somebody. It's not. It's actually a strength. And, in harnessing that internal strength that you have to let people know, this is bothering me and this is what's going to happen. And it's okay to talk to somebody. If you can do that through a small step, like I told you earlier, a conduit, whatever that may be, because a lot of people are afraid to talk to a colleague.
Yeah.
Especially in the first responder space. They don't want to be seen as weak. Oh, that this person is like, they're talking to a therapist. Oh, I wonder what's wrong with them.
Right.
I was talking to a friend of mine who's a retired firefighter, and, was talking about the conversation we had. And he's like, yeah, we have someone that comes to our facility and would talk to us, whether we had a horrific call, whether we had this or whatever it may have been, that person would come, plant themselves in, and people could go talk to them and freely have this discussion. It wasn't they talked about it amongst each other, but they did talk about it. Here's what's going on. Here's what's happening. So I encourage everyone to, especially men, like we talked about, if you're struggling in any way, shape, or form, to know that it's okay to get help. It's not a weakness. And, I can preach this all day long, that it's not a weakness, but how do they get and learn to embrace it?
Yeah.
And they've got to take that first step. It's like we talked about, having the conversation.
Yeah.
It's important to start the conversation. I encourage them all to start the conversation. And I think they will be very surprised at the relief and the results they get.
And, and for the partners out there of a man that they love, who they think might be struggling, I think, from a female perspective, I will say that we want to fix it. We want to give solutions. We want to send them off to a therapist that we love. We want to do all of these things. But at the end of the day, I think one of the bits that I received, nuggets I received from a clinician was encourage your man to spend time with other men, with their tribe, with connect. Connection is everything. If they're isolating, then that's not a good space to be. So as a woman, what we can do to support our men is to encourage them to have more time connecting with their friends.
Yeah, I think that conversely goes both ways, whether it's men or, men can do the same thing for women. It's interesting when you think of a caregiver, or what you want to do is care for them and do what's right for them. You don't want to enable the behavior.
Right.
So that's in terms of understanding and, being a supportive partner, understanding what's going on. And, it's interesting because sometimes partners chastise the other person for being that way.
Yeah.
Why are you that way? What's going on? You can't do that. You've got to be very supportive.
Right.
And to your point, you enjoy this, go do this, go have that conversation, what have you, because sometimes it's difficult. Sometimes it's difficult for a man to be seen as weak, especially with his partner, and one of the things I try to do is be vulnerable and open, and let my partner know, you know what, I'm not all right. I'm not okay. I'm feeling it. Or conversely, your partner should be able to tell you that. And, I think it's important when having a conversation, hey, this is the word that I tell you. If I tell you this word, it's important. I need you right now. But if I say these other 10 words, it's just conversation, right? But if I say this one, I need you, then you're there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so, I love that. I love that. And I guess that's how you guys operate, which is just beautiful. I love it.
Yeah, I didn't always operate that way, but it's just interesting to operate that way and be open and have open communication about how you're feeling, what's going on, and be present in the moment with each other, and then understand what's happening. I mean, listen, we all struggle. We're going to struggle. Life's going to throw things at you.
Right.
I just go back to what my grandfather said. Life gives you the test first and the lesson after.
Yeah.
It's very, very important to understand that. And we've got to learn from that lesson. That's important. So
amazing. Do you have any, because our time has blinked by, do you have any final words of wisdom or thoughts that you would like to share?
I just, if anybody's interested, you can go check out my website. A portion of the proceeds do go to mental health, substance abuse, and suicide awareness. It's extremely important for me to give back. And then conversely, I just want to thank you for what you're doing. I try to catch your conversations as often as possible. And I have connected with some of your guests, by the way, and talked to them and just said, I appreciate what you're doing, because, we're taking small steps. We're actually trying to change the conversation, and it's got to start somewhere. Right. So, you're doing your piece, I'm doing my piece, and everybody else is doing their piece. But it's just been a pleasure to be on your show and spend time with you. I'm looking forward to doing another room in Clubhouse, and I think it'll be amazing. So, and like I said, to your point, hope, let's just help one person every day. And I'm sorry I didn't catch the cue. It just wasn't there. I was totally focused on my grandfather.
It's okay. It's totally okay. I'm so grateful that you're here. Thank you for the acknowledgement. That's very kind of you.
You betcha.
But we're both in the same boat, wanting to do more. So it's good to connect with another like-minded soul, and let's stay connected, do some more Clubhouse rooms. And I just want to support everything you're doing, because it's equally as important in Vegas as it is here in New Jersey. So
it's important. It's important in other parts of the world. That's why when building a business, I don't know how many businesses go, I want to give back to areas where people need it most, that I've struggled with, right? That's the thing about being an entrepreneur. You can go, I've struggled in these areas, and it's a part of my business to give back. That's the important thing that you can do, whether it's through a community, whether it's through monetary, whatever it is, but giving back is so healthy. So
right. I just want to address Andrea. She's such a wonderful soul. Thank you for watching, my dear. Yeah, so great.
Hi, Andrea.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the time. Like my grandfather said, thank you for your time, because we can never get this time back, but it was amazing. So
thank you, Paul. You're the best. All right. I'll see you soon.
We'll talk soon. See you.